Hey, welcome back to the Pace Podcast. My name is Sophie, and we have a really exciting guest on the podcast today. This is Stephanie.
Hi.
Stephanie, will you introduce yourself? Tell them what you do for work and why you're here for this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I am Stephanie Soderstrom. I am a minister of Word and Sacrament in the Reformed Church of America. So that means that I'm educated the same way that your pastors are educated.
You have your MDiv.
I have my MDiv,
okay.
Yes. And I work for the Reformed Church in America Global Missions. I supervise missionaries out in the world in North America and in Asia, and I do work with churches.
Nice. And you've always worked in the Holland area?
Yes. Ever since I finished seminary, I worked at a nonprofit in Holland for a little while, and then I've worked at the RCA for 10 years.
Oh, wow. Are you a Hope grad?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Hope grad, Western Sem grad.
Okay, so your roots are deep here. But you didn't grow up here?
No. I am originally from Central Illinois. I just came up here to go to college.
And then you met your husband in seminary?
I did.
Oh, cute.
Yeah.
And he works at the seminary?
He does.
Okay.
Yes. He works with disability ministry stuff at the seminary.
So you guys are really connected to the seminary RCA thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you're also founding members of the Boulevard.
We are. Yes. Ben's living room.
Yeah. Okay. That's so fun. I love that there's still people that are founding members here. I think it's so sweet.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this episode was requested by young adults in our church. And what we're talking about is how you know if a church is the right place for you.
Yeah.
Because choosing a church can feel really confusing, and it can just there's so many options.
Yes.
Especially in Holland.
Yes.
There's the non-denominational churches, there's the big ones, there's the house churches. I know that house church is becoming kind of a thing again.
Yeah.
And so today we just want to talk about how we actually choose a church in a way that is using good discernment and not just choosing based on what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah.
I think we tend to be picky. So it's how do we know when we should be picky about that thing? And then when it's okay, you're just using that as an excuse to not be in this place.
Yes. Yes.
So I want to start with the first big question. What do you think are non-negotiables that people should look for in a church? These are the bread and butter of what you should look for. And if they're not there, then it's okay to not be there.
Yeah, for sure. So if you go to a church and they are not talking about God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, then that's
the point.
probably not a place for you.
Yeah.
I think when I think about things that I'm looking for in church, I don't care if you want a church with a traditional worship or a church with more contemporary worship or a folk band, none of that matters to me. I think that the most important thing is that you are at a church where the pastor is leading from scripture.
Opening the Bible.
So they're opening up the Bible and reading the text, and they are digging deep to think about what it means and how it could be applied to your life. What is God calling you to do? And another thing that I think we should really be looking for is a church that is leaving space for us to figure some of those things out and to ask questions and to wonder.
Really good point.
Because if a church is trying to feed you all of the answers and tell you what to think, then they're not really inviting you to go deeper to find out what God is saying.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's one I never really would have thought of, but as a kids pastor, I do want that to be a main point of our kids ministry is you can ask questions, you can wonder, you can even doubt him.
Yes.
I was at a camp this week with 5th and 6th graders, and this one girl was I'm only at camp because my parents grew up coming to this camp, and she was I don't even know if I want to follow Jesus, and I feel it's bad if I say that here.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was cool to see her be am I allowed to say that I don't really know if I believe this yet?
Yeah.
And I feel what was great about that experience for her is that we could offer it to her and say here is the truth about who he is, but it's you get to choose if you want that and if you want to follow him.
Yep.
So you're saying there should be space for you to choose what you believe about certain things.
Yeah, and I think that it should be a church that is inviting you into something.
Yeah.
You want a community that's inviting you to follow Jesus, the same way that God is inviting you to be with him. God isn't cutting us off because we're not sure or because we did something wrong. I think about all the people in the Bible who did something that wasn't really in line with what God would have wanted them to do. But Jesus opens his arms wide to them, and God continues to say, like, David, man after God's own heart, right? And David did so many wrong things. So a church that is making space for you to ask questions and not cutting people off just because they have done something or they've disagreed with something.
That's a really good point.
I just think that's sort of like the whole arc of Scripture is that God loves us and is calling us to come to him.
Yeah.
And that doesn't include, at least, like once Jesus comes back and is calling, it doesn't include a lot of like cutting people away.
Yeah.
It includes calling people in.
Yeah.
So that arc of love is an important part for me of a church.
That's great. What are some things that you think are just preference? Like, I think worship.
Yeah, worship is totally preference. What time your church meets is totally preference.
Sunday, There are churches that like meet over dinner sometimes.
Yes, which is so cool. Like, that's awesome. I think size. Is it a church that's close to you or a church that you drive to? Those are preference things, and you can look for churches. Like, so when my husband and I, before Boulevard started, my husband and I were looking for a church, and we sort of made a list, like, here are all of the things that we would love to find in a church, but we know we're not going to find them all. So, like, if you're looking for a church, maybe for the first time, or you've realized that you need to look for a new church, maybe think about, like, okay, I would love, like, in my ideal church, I would love for it to be like this. And then know that you're not going to find all of those things in one place, but where's some place where you can find like the most important pieces of that. Like, we really wanted a church where we could be a part of a group. That was super important. And we really wanted a church that was close to where we were, and that was part of our denominational tradition. So those were like our top three. There were lots of other things that we cared about.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
That would have been cool. But we didn't find them all. And actually, the church that we landed at, like, my husband did not love the preacher in that church. Like, the preaching was not his favorite thing, but there was nothing wrong with the preaching. He wasn't saying anything that was untrue. It just, like, Luke would have preferred a different style. That's okay. Like, we can prefer different things and still think, like, this community is the right community for me.
Yeah. I feel like what I hear a lot of people say when we ask, like, oh, like, what brought you to the Boulevard, or like, what makes you love, like, your home church? It's very rare that they even really talk about what happens on stage. I feel like for a lot of people, it's the other people that they like, their community, and the things like life groups and serving. Like,
totally.
It's more of those things anyway, usually.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we tend to get a little picky about like preaching and stuff, but we also have access to so much of it.
Yes. Like, so if you want to hear a different sermon, you can absolutely access other sermons, but you can't find another community that feels like a safe, loving community where you can grow in your faith with other people.
Yeah, that's a good point. You can't like mimic the community from like an online church.
Right.
I think that brings up a good topic of like, what would you say to people who do only attend church online? What are your thoughts?
You know what? I don't think that that's bad. I think that there are situations where people need an online community based on where they are, based on, maybe their work schedule is really hard, life stage. There's all sorts of reasons. Online communities can be really thriving. I think it's just how you interact with that online community. If you're interacting, if you're having conversations with people online, if you're learning and growing, like, it can be fine. It can be great, actually. Fine is it can be really good. But I think if you have the opportunity to be in community with people face to face, even if it feels a little uncomfortable,
I think that's usually what it is.
It doesn't, like, it's not always comfortable to go into a new community, especially a new community. It's not always comfortable to go to a community, even that you've been a part of, after something big has happened in your life and people know about it, right? Like, that can feel awkward, but we can't just run away from community because it feels a little uncomfortable. And I think sometimes we do that with the church, something that we don't agree with, or something that has happened and we feel uncomfortable about. Not like safety stuff. Safety stuff is important, but like, if it's just an uncomfortability, then like, do we need to leave, or could we lean in and try to work it through?
Yeah. I feel like I was talking to a friend about this the other day because I'm reading this book called What Grows in Weary Lands. Have you heard of it?
I haven't.
It's about like Christian resilience, and it was talking about how like what we usually buy into is like when life is really hard, we're like, okay, I'll just go to a different place. Like whether it's like I'm gonna move, or I'll just find new friends, or find a new job, or
yes, let's just start over and leave that
yeah.
behind.
And so she was basically said that like her whole thing is like put your butt in the seat, like sit in the pew, stay in the pew, like don't just immediately run away because it's like your circumstances will follow you wherever you go.
Yes.
And I had a really similar thing happen to me like after I moved to Michigan, and then the reason why I moved to Michigan ended up not like coming to fruition, and I was like, I guess I'll just go to a new place. But like I felt the Lord saying like, no, you need to stay in this place because all those things were going to follow me wherever I went, you know? Like it wasn't going to solve the problem to just go be a part of a different community.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There is an impulse in all of us like, well, this isn't going great. Probably there's someplace better.
Yeah.
Or someplace easier.
Yeah.
And that's not always true. Sometimes staying and working through the thing that's hard, or living with the fact that you don't love the way that they do something, actually is an opportunity for you really to grow in your faith and in your community and as a person. And so like it's sometimes better in the long run if we stay with something that's a little bit hard.
Yeah. Not unsafe.
Not unsafe, just a little uncomfortable or a little hard.
Yeah. How can you tell if a church is a place where you'll actually grow spiritually? Like, is there certain programs they should have? Is it more about the people? Like, how can you tell if this is a place you can become more like Jesus?
I think that it's not about programs. Okay. It's so rarely about a specific program. There might be really great programs at a church, but I think that if the community, if the people who are at that church are wanting to grow in faith and are encouraging each other to grow in faith, if they want to encourage you to grow in your faith, that is probably a better sign of that church being a space where you could grow than a church that has so many programs, no matter what they are. Yeah. I think, one of the things that can be really encouraging as we grow in our faith is to see people in different stages. And so if you can find a church that feels good to you, that has some people who are older than you and people who are younger than you, and you can find connections in those spaces, then you can kind of feel out like, these people who have been here longer than me, like, are they growing in their faith? Are they digging in? Because if the community at large is doing that, then they're going to encourage you to do that as well. Yeah. And if it's a community that feels like they just show up on Sunday and they don't really do anything else, you're probably going to fall into that kind of a pattern too.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. I also wonder, like, you can't figure this out in 1 week of, like, visiting.
Right.
So you kind of do have to, like, put your butt in the seat and stay for a little bit to really pick up on it.
Yes.
So what would you say to someone who, like, attends a new church for the first time and, like, they immediately are like, well, this isn't my place because of a preference thing? Would you say, like, maybe try it out a little longer?
I would say, so I think if you're in a new community, or if you're like starting to look for a new church because like you really just, you're going to leave, like you're going to need a new church. Yeah. You need a new church, whatever the reason. It's okay to spend a few weeks, months, like some time just going around and trying different spaces to find out, like, maybe you think, okay, in the last 6 weeks, I've visited 6 churches. These 2 feel like 2 that I might want to think about more. They felt really good to me. The community was warm. Like some of the things that I was hoping to hear, just like those things were there. And then go back and just try a few weeks in a row at one space and see, like, what's coming up? Are people greeting me? Am I, what am I feeling as I pray and think about this church? Like, do I feel like This could be my home church. That doesn't mean that you're getting everything that you want, because that's not what church is about.
Yeah.
Church isn't about us, getting everything on our list. But if it feels like a place that could be a good spot for you, then yeah, maybe invest a little bit. Sometimes we can't find out if a space is someplace that we could stay for a while without actually trying to put something into it.
Yeah, that brings me to like my next thought too, is once you find a church that you want to be at, how do you go from just attending to like actually being invested and like belonging in that place? Because something that I have noticed is when people like come to the Boulevard and they immediately start to actually like become known in this place, it's because they have made themselves known. Like, I can think of a friend who moved here and he immediately started coming to like our midweek service, our Sunday services. He joined a life group. Like, he made himself known.
Yeah.
And it was easy to get to know him and disciple him because he was putting in like the effort.
Yes.
So I wonder if sometimes people are like, oh, well, no one approached me with this, or no one asked me to do this, so I guess I shouldn't be in that place. But how much of it is like you have to seek those things out too?
Yeah, it's both. I mean, there are churches that are by design churches that you can slide into and slide out of. And that's actually like intentional for them because they want it to be a space where people can just show up and not feel a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
But if you do want to get involved, probably, unless it's a really small church where they're like, hi, you're new. Oh my gosh, you're new. If you've been going and you think this is a church that I want to stay at, like, meet somebody and tell them that. Like, hey, I'm new here. How do I get involved? I really, I want to be a part of this community. And like, that does not mean that you have to be a big people person. Like, you could be on the AV team. You could be on like, you could be behind the scenes. It could be like, it could be a Bible study that you go to because your schedule is hard for other things. Like, whatever it is, I think we do have to put in some effort. We're not just going to miraculously be asked to serve in the perfect spot or invited to just the right group. You might go to a group or a study or something at this church that you like, and it might not be the right place for you, but that doesn't mean there's not a right place for you at that church. It just means that you tried something and it wasn't quite right. That happens to all of us.
How do you think someone should approach the church if they've been hurt by the church before? Because I think what I've heard about the Boulevard, like I wasn't here at the beginning, was that it kind of started to become a church for people who were unchurched because of church hurt. Which is why, like, we have values in like social justice and things like that. And so it attracted people to this place because of like what was happening in our world. So how do you think people can approach a new church when they are coming with a lot of the like, I don't trust church people?
That's a really hard one. I think two things. I think first, we have all been hurt by the church, whether that made us leave the church that we were at or not. There are always ways that we have been hurt by the church because the church is made up of people. That's always going to be true. And it's always going to be a possibility. Like, whenever you put yourself into something, there's always the possibility that you could get hurt. I think if you have been hurt by the church and you're still open to going, like, thank God that you're still open to being with God, with other people. It's worth it to talk to somebody and say, hey, my last church experience didn't go well. Here's what happened. Whether that's a pastor at your church or an elder or somebody who you can just kind of share that experience with and then like see what they have to say about it. So I think that one of the things that I've appreciated at the Boulevard, having been here for a long time, it's not that nobody's ever been hurt here, right? People have been hurt by our church, at our church. But we try really hard not to just do, how do I want to say this? I think at the Boulevard, we try to do all of the things that we can to repair.
Yeah.
Like if there's a possibility that we could repair, then we want to do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes at the end of the day, somebody is still hurt. But we're not just writing them off.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's my opinion. But I think that is a lot of hurt for some people, is that they feel like they were really written off. So being able to talk to people about it, and then finding out if your church, like, if you could just ask somebody, like, how do you handle it when people leave, or when something's going wrong? Like, what are you doing to try to help that relationship?
Yeah, I think that was big to me when I started working at the Boulevard, is I had never like worked or been to a church before that had like a system for when people left. Like when someone would leave our team or leave the church, it was like, you need to reach out to them and offer to meet with them. Like you need to know what it was.
Yeah.
If they're willing and available and want to do that, like ask them what it was so that we can like we can be a part of that process of reconciliation for them, and not just be like, oh, well, they don't want to be here, so we don't want to know them anymore.
Right. Yeah. Because, and as a church and as people, we should be learning. Like if we have done something that hurts someone, sometimes we need to own that and make some changes. And
to become better.
I don't know. People don't always see that happening, but if you ask somebody who's on a church staff, like, hey, like, I've been really hurt by the church. Like, how do you think that you could help me with that? Or what do you think, is this church going to be a safe place for me? Then I think that they'll be really willing to talk to you about that. So if that's something that you're concerned about and you are willing to talk to somebody about it, that's probably helpful.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned about like talking to a staff member too, one of my favorite things is like when people will say like, can we grab coffee? Like, because it's awkward for a church staff member to know like who wants that and who doesn't, because people are so weary of church now. So it's like when I, meet someone for the first time and I'm like, do I make the ask? Do I just like you don't know?
Yeah.
And so like even today after this, like I'm meeting with someone who is like new to our church, and we're just going to get to know each other and talk about the church, and she's going to ask questions and I'm going to ask questions. And so I really recommend, like, if you're up for that, like just sending an email and being like, I would love to get coffee with someone on staff just to chat. Like, I think that's a great idea. And I never would have been like brave enough to do that. But also, like, they're just people.
Yeah.
Like, they're just humans. So
I think so too. I think, if you're interested in a church and you want to know more, talking to somebody who works at the church, or asking to talk to somebody who's on the board of elders or whatever, like, that's a great idea, because that gives you a personal connection. And as much as we think that like pastors and church staff know everybody who's coming, or they know what you need, they don't read our minds. And so we need to say, I would really like to have coffee with someone, find a place to serve, grow in my faith. They don't know those things unless you say. So if you can be brave and say that.
Yeah, I think it's really awesome when people do that. And I've noticed a lot of fruit when people make that decision of like, well, I'm going to go meet with this person. Yeah. Because then you're making yourself known in this place. Because you're right, like, we don't know everybody who's walking into this building and what they need. Yeah. So I do think it is like a 50-50. Like, you have to, if the church has to be welcoming and has to want to get to know you, but you also have to make it known that you want them to know you.
Yeah, your faith is yours, and you have a responsibility to actively do some things to grow your faith. And the church has a responsibility to provide certain things like sound scriptural teaching and good care for the community. And, the things that the church provides are there, but then you have the responsibility to step in and take part.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when people are looking for a church, like, would you say it's okay to look for a church that values the things that you value, even if it's not like biblical things? Like, for example, like being like a multi-generational church, or like a multi-ethnic church. Like, those those preferences or those values that you have in your life, like you can look for those in a church as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's interesting because like I would say that in so many cases, those are scriptural things to look for, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of interaction between generations in scripture,
Yes,
right? Like
yeah.
Jesus is saying, let the little children come. And Jesus is, reaching out to people who are of different racial ethnic groups than what his disciples would have been. The apostles went all over spreading the gospel. So I think, yes, I think we need to be a little careful about how broad we say like your preferences outside of scripture can influence. But those two things that you mentioned, I think those you can find those there.
I guess I'm thinking like, some churches are very like globally minded. Like they're more like,
yes,
missionary, going on mission trips. Like, and then some churches, like I would say the Boulevard is more of like locally minded.
Yeah. So I think if you're talking about that, I think that it is really important for churches to care about their local community and their global community. But if you're really passionate about serving the global church, then find a church that also does that. If you're really passionate about caring for kids in your community, there might be a church in your community that's also really passionate about that thing. And it might make sense for you to go there.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's cool that you can find things that you just value in your life inside of the church. And I think that is what kind of keeps people in a place usually. It's like the people, but also that the people value what I value. We're like on mission together.
Yeah, totally. I think that it is something that I have found throughout my work. Churches often develop like a mission, like a calling. And if you talk to the leaders of that church, like, tell me about your congregation, then they can identify our congregation cares about these things.
Okay.
In a general way. Maybe not every single person, but like there's usually our congregation cares about things like this.
That's a good question to ask.
And so you could ask, you could say, tell me about what your congregation cares about. And if you really care about something specific, like maybe you really care about, recovery ministry. You really care about churches reaching out to people who have had substance abuse issues or are coming back from prison or something like that. There's probably a church in your community that also really cares about that. So ask those questions.
Yeah, that's a good question to ask. Like, what do the people in your church care about and what do they value?
Yeah, and what are they doing?
Yeah. Yeah, what are you guys doing? And you can see that in the programs that they have as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So you can always look at like, what are they offering? Because that will show what their value is.
Yeah, or what are they supporting? What are they giving towards?
Yeah. How, I think something that I hear a lot, which I never really cared about this in the church just because I don't know, it just didn't bother me. But if a church, when it comes to finances, like being, open about where your finances are going, would you say that is like a green flag in a church? Like you know where they're very they're putting it out there where things are going.
Yes. I think that if you look at a church's budget, you can tell what that church cares about.
Yeah.
And I think if you can't see the church's budget, then that might be a little of a red flag. That doesn't mean that it should be necessarily printed in the bulletin every week. Not all the churches do that. That doesn't mean anything bad is going on. Yeah. But at some point, you should, if you stay long enough, you should be able to see, our church gives like this. This is where our tithes and offerings are going. This is what our budget looks like.
Or if you asked for it. And
if you asked, someone would tell you.
Yeah, someone should say, thank you for asking. Here's what it is.
Yeah, our giving looks like this, and we give to these ministries. This is what we support. So I think there is a level of transparency that's healthy. Yes.
Okay. That's great. Is there any like final thoughts that you want people to know about like looking for a church, just being a part of the church, like anything that you want to get out there before we close?
Yeah, I think especially for younger people, well, for older people too, for all the people. It is really awesome to have intergenerational relationships. And so if you can find a church where you can have that or where you can look for that, I just think that it's really healthy because it helps us to grow, all of us. people who are farther along in their faith and people who are just, coming in and wanting to grow a lot more. So if you're in a church that's all one age, that's not bad. That just happens sometimes.
Yeah, it's almost like you can't really control.
Yeah, you can't control that. But if you're looking, if you're thinking, I'm looking for a new church, and you have the opportunity to go someplace where there are a lot of different generations interacting together, I think it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So that's a preference for me.
Yeah.
But I think it's great.
That's a good one. Yeah. So I guess the question for people would not be asking, like, is this church perfect? But can I grow and contribute in this place?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's good. I feel like that's the question I would leave people with is if you find yourself like leaving one place to go to another place, it's not, is this place better than the last place or more perfect than the last place? It's like, is this a place where I can become more like Jesus? I can grow and I can contribute. And also, I would say that having friends at church is what keeps people in the church.
Yeah.
I know Pastor Ben says that all the time, that like people who have friends here, they stay here.
Yes. Relationships are really important.
So it's a good thing to make friends at church. And I love that like my main community of people I see throughout the week, I met here. Like I think that's just really sweet because we are on mission together and believe the same things. And I think that's just important to have people you want to see here.
Yeah, I think so too.
I love seeing my people. Like when they walk in the door, I'm like, oh, my people are here. So it makes me want to be in this place.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say was sort of like you mentioned, if you're leaving one place thinking like, I'm going to find a better place. If you find yourself consistently leaving churches because they're not meeting your expectations, maybe reconsider what your expectations are for the church. Like just sit down and take a look at what you think the church should be.
Yeah.
Because the church is meant to be a community of people who love Jesus and are working together to grow in that faith and to show that love to other people. So if you keep going to different churches and you keep leaving them all, maybe you're expecting something that's not actually what the church is for.
Okay. That's a good point. And that's something to like consider and think about and pray about and maybe talk to someone about.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yep. Thanks for asking.
So fun. Yeah. Yep. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.